What is up, nerds? It is Reptile DIY here again, and today I'm going to be answering the question that you never asked, which is how to make a bum flap. What the fuck is a bum flap in the first place? And of course, I'm going to be making this utilitarian, so it's not just a piece of fabric hanging off your ass. We are going to be adding some zipper pockets so you can hide things. So let's get this shit started. Bum flaps first showed up in the punk scene in 1976, when Vivienne Westwood decided to add a random flap to the ass of their bondage pants. This was back in the 70s, when punks were adding whatever scraps of fabric, chain, and safety pins to their outfit, and calling it rebellion. Now, it wasn't until the 1980s when a raw, more grimy version of punk emerged, giving the bum flap a second life and a utilitarian purpose. As we all know, I am talking about crust punk. Crust punks lived a more degraded existence than their fashionista predecessors, living their lives dabbling in political activism, squatting, and sometimes the radical act of self-imposed homelessness. And for anyone that has not lived out of a backpack wearing the same pair of pants for months on end, you would be surprised how fast your pants fall apart. Now, this is where the origins of the modern bum flap really take hold. You see, having an extra layer, sometimes double-layered fabric bum flap hanging off your ass while you're living on the streets, sitting on corners, really keeps your ass warm and makes your pants live just a tidbit longer. But I know you did not come here for a history lesson. You came here to learn how to make a bum flap while you're squatting in your parents' vacation home in South Beach. So let's talk about supplies. So supplies are going to be pretty straightforward with this thing. You're going to need a screen-printed back patch of a band that you like, or at least a band that you pretend to like. Honestly, if you're not a woman, they're not going to ask you to name 3 songs anyway. Next up, you're going to need a piece of scrap canvas or scrap denim. You could actually substitute this piece for a second back patch if you want to have a reversible bum flap. I'm not going to make a reversible bum flap in this video, but I will talk about it at the end. You're also going to need a way to sew up this bum flap. I'm going to use dental floss because that is what punks do. And anybody that deviates from the norm in the punk scene will be reported to the fashion police immediately. You will also need some D-rings and a way to attach your bum flap to your pants. You can use carabiners, you can use D-clips, you can use whatever you want. Your local hardware store will have multiple options for about a few dollars if you want to pay for it in the first place. You're also going to need a way to attach your D-rings to your bum flap. Me personally, I like to use nylon strips because of how durable they are. You can also use scraps of fabric, denim, canvas, whatever you have laying around. It doesn't really matter as long as it works. Now, this next list of items are not necessary, but they will make your job a lot easier. First and foremost is a pair of sharp scissors, preferably fabric scissors, or even a sharp knife. A hot clothes iron will also come in handy. Safety pins will also help. And if you want to put a pocket inside of your bum flap so you can hide things, you can use a spare zipper, or you can use a throwaway pocket. I'll talk more about that later. So step number 1 is taking our back patch, and you really want to iron it out if you have an iron, and you want to take your back piece of fabric and iron that out. Like I said, you can use 2 different back patches to make it reversible. I'll talk more about that later. But here we are, I have everything ironed out. Now let's talk about these secret pockets. You don't have to put this in your bum flap, but I'm going to show you how to put one in mine. You can just get like a zipper like this, but I'm really anti-consumerist, and it seems like a lot of products these days come with these useless zipper bags. Whether you're buying glasses, a new phone case, whatever it is, they just come with these useless zipper bags. So I'm taking this mesh bag I got, and I'm going to use that as the pocket, as opposed to this mesh fabric bag ending up in a landfill or a trash can somewhere. I'm going to give it a second life. So I'm going to take my already pre-made pocket, lay it on my back panel, and kind of trace out where that zipper is going to lay. Now that I got it traced out, I'm going to open it up, cut it open with whatever you got. Honestly, not my best work at cutting, but you'll make do. Next up, you can take a hot iron, fold those edges over, and it gives you such a nice flat seam to sew. Speaking of hand sewing, since you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you never hand sewn anything in your life. So I am going to show you how I set up my thread situation. First and foremost, I take 2 arm lengths of dental floss or waxed thread. I run my needle through one end, find the middle, pull both loose ends out, tie those loose ends together, do a couple couple double knots, and there you go. This method allows you to hand sew with 2 pieces of thread at the same time, so it's twice as strong. Alright guys, if you don't want to watch me sew in a secret pocket with a zipper, then follow the timestamp below and it'll take you straight to sewing the bum flap. So first I'm going to start from the inside of one of the pockets, and I'm going to anchor that down really good, and then I'm going to do a back stitch all the way across. From the inside, it's very important you do it from the inside. I know I'm rushing, but here we go. There's the back stitch. Not my best work, but we got the bottom. Now we're going to come in from the top, and we are going to repeat that same process. Anchor one end, do that back stitch from the inside, anchor the other end. Make sure your zipper pocket is able to open and close. Like I said, you want to do those back stitches from the inside of the pocket so you don't accidentally sew over your zipper. And it will make more sense once you get in there and try doing it. And it is pretty straightforward. If you have dabbled in hand sewing before, this should be a piece of cake. If this is your first time hand sewing, I would skip putting in a zipper because it might be a little bit too intense, but honestly, it's really not that hard once you get in the trenches and start hand sewing. So now we're actually going to start sewing our bum flap. We're going to take our back patch, lay it on top of our back panel. We're going to fold it over so the back patch is folded in on the back panel. After you get your folds in, you can take your hot iron and make those seams nice and crisp and tight. You don't have to, but I like to do it that way. Next up, insert your safety pins as placeholders so nothing moves while you're sewing. Now hand sewing pretty easy. You're going to be doing what's called a whip stitch. It's the same thing if you sew a back patch to a jacket or a vest, or even sewing patches onto your pants. I like to keep my stitches uniform and about 1/4 of an inch apart from each other, so everything looks nice and clean. But hey, that's just me. As you can see, when I end one section of thread, I tie it off, cut the loose ends, and burn those loose ends down. You can do this with wax thread, and you can do it with dental floss, because it is a polyester material and it burns down and doesn't let your loose ends fray. Now, if you're using just basic thread, tie it off really tight and cut it off. Do not burn it. As you can see now, I'm cutting out all the excess fabric, making sure that there's plenty of room for me to open up that zipper, and so it's all easily accessible. So our basic double layered bum flap is pretty much done. Next up, we are going to add our straps. Like I said, I'm using nylon straps because they're cheap and durable. You can use scrap fabric pieces for this and fabricate your own straps, but essentially I'm taking my nylon strap, running it through the D-ring, and sewing it in on itself. And like always, use a safety pin to hold everything down so it doesn't move while you sew. And you essentially just do a back stitch a couple of times over. Remember, this is like the most vulnerable part of the bum flap. You want it as strong as possible, so I did that back stitch 3, 4, 5, 6 times, back and forth, back and forth. You want it to be tight and strong because that's what's going to rip. You want these stitches to be tighter than a crab's asshole. As you can see, I'm trimming my nylon strap as I go because I only have so much. Burning wax thread or floss melts the ends so they don't come undone. Now when it comes to attaching your bum flap to your pants, you just want to find something that you could attach to that D-ring. I'm using some D-clips. You can use carbiners, you can use some double-sided D-clips, whatever makes it easily accessible to clip it on and clip it off works. Like I said, hit up your hardware store. You don't have to pay for it. Like my papa always said, shop local, still corporate. But anyway, here is our finished bum flap with a utilitarian purpose and a secret zipper to hide things. Now, like I said in the beginning of the video, I want to talk about making a double-sided bum flap. You're going to want to take 2 back patches, make sure they face each other, and you are going to do a running stitch down the 2 corners and the bottom, leaving the top stitch open. When you're all done with that, you're going to pull it inside out, leaving you with essentially a pillow that needs to be stuffed. And you're going to have 1 back patch on one side, another back patch on the other. You're going to sew across the top, and you're going to add your straps, your D-rings, and all your hardware so it attaches. This is an easy way to make a reversible bum flap. Obviously, I did not do this in my video. Personally, I love the idea of having 2 different bands on a reversible bum flap, but it's just another way to make a bum flap. Like they always say, there's more than one way to skin a man. So you might be thinking to yourself, Reptile, these bum flaps look very corny. Well, let me show you how to make them look cornier. You can wear them up front. This is what we did back in my day. We would wear crotch flaps and bum flaps, as it was the style back then. Now, all the crust punks in the world can tell you that bum flaps have a utilitarian purpose, but honestly, they just give you some extra real estate to show off your favorite band. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and learned some new skills. And while you're at it, check out my other DIY tutorials, as well as my other tutorials on Crust Pants. And hit that button down below. Until next time, I'll see you later, nerds.